Listen up. We got an important mission ahead of us. Blackwood are preparing for a massive assault in North Africa. Right now, though, they're vulnerable. Their defenses aren't fully operational. This is our only chance to deal the operation here a crippling blow. Follow my instructions. We might just do it.
Howdy, everybody. This is Emmett Watkins Jr., also known as DJ161, on various places on the internet. And I'm here to talk to you a little bit about the new, technically Marvel, not MCU, but Marvel movie, Venom. I just got back from the theater watching it, and it's definitely a movie I want to have a conversation about. Now, first off, you guys have probably, because it is a Marvel film, MCU or not, it's still a Marvel film, so it's been getting coverage constantly over the last couple months leading up to its release. And a lot of people have had the just expectation that this movie was going to be a steaming pile of crap. They had the expectation that it was going to be just irredeemably bad and it was going to be awful. And a lot of the reviews that came out before the film dropped, a lot of those reviews pretty much confirmed that suspicion for a lot of people. Some reviews compared it to the Halle Berry Catwoman film. And that movie is known to be one of the worst movies of all time, let alone just superhero movies. So that's the type of expectations that... Ooh, sorry, I gotta turn down my notifications. That's the type of expectations that people had going into this film. And that's what I was told to believe as well. But after getting out of the movie, I was way more positive on it than I expected to be. And we're going to talk about a little bit why that is. So, the first thing that I want to say in this movie, so I just, like I said, got back from the movie. We saw a late night showing, me and a couple of friends from work, and it was, what I was expecting for this movie was just I was expecting it to be something that's so bad that I could laugh at. I actually went and saw, not the third most recent one that came out, but the second 50 Shades of Grey movie. I don't care about those movies at all, not even a little bit. But I think one of my friends wanted to see it, so I said, okay, fine, we'll watch it. We'll make it an event or whatever, and we'll all hang out. And I found myself laughing at that movie so much. And I could tell that I was laughing because it was bad, because I was laughing at things that I was not supposed to laugh at. There were plenty of... you guys... Those films are widely panned, so scenes of illogical things happening to characters. There's one scene where Christian Grey, the main love interest, he crashes in an airplane, and then everyone thinks he's dead for like a total of maybe 10 minutes, and then he just walks through the door with like tattered clothes and looking all dirty, like he just climbed through an entire jungle to get to his apartment, and no one saw him on the way to his apartment. Things like that, I was like, wow, this is completely ridiculous. That movie was just awful, and I had a good time watching that movie just because, I was pretty much picking it apart as I watched the film. Same thing with Batman vs. Superman. Batman vs. Superman, I had already heard all the bad things people had to say about that movie before I watched it, and so I came into that movie, just giggling and just finding so many things funny in that movie. Like this is a spoiler. If you haven't seen Batman vs. Superman at this point, I wouldn't even tell you to go watch it. Well, here's what I'll say. There was a really big death that happened at the end of the movie, and I was like, I was laughing during the death scene. It was so over the top and so dramatic. I was like giggling to myself, but it was a death scene, so I was trying to like keep it to myself. And then my friends just turned over and saw me trying to contain my laughter, and they just like burst out, and like none of us could contain ourselves in the middle of this little, really haunting death scene. And it's literally like this character was about to marry another character, and like they bring out the wedding ring, and they're like, yeah, they were gonna propose to you, and it's like, oh my god. It was just so dumb. So I say that saying, hey, I enjoyed watching Batman vs. Superman in theaters with friends because it was something that we all collectively just laughed at. It was funny. So when we get to Venom, I was expecting, another movie going experience similar to that, Let's watch this terrible movie. Let's all laugh at this terrible movie. But here's the thing. Here's the biggest comparison I make. Here's the comparison I made as soon as the movie ended. I was expecting. So when, all right, let's go back. For a couple years, maybe not even a couple years, for a couple months, when I was about, I was probably in middle school sometime. So I was a very, very young kid. For a little while there, the first Transformers movie, I'm talking about Michael Bay, the first one with Shia LaBeouf and all them. That movie was my favorite movie of all time for a brief moment. Now, I was very young, of course, and that was before I had, any deeper connection or any deeper love for movies, or really any art, if I'm being honest. But I saw that movie, and it was a completely, I was actually with my little sister. We were both visiting my aunt who lived in Miami at the time. So we were on vacation. We were already feeling good. And then we got to see these big robots blow stuff up and fight each other. And, they had their personalities and whatnot. And it was more than just look at all these explosions. These robots all had personalities. And sure, in the movies afterwards, some of these personalities would be called into question, some being just straight up stereotypes. But as a little kid, I didn't really care. I was like, look at these funny caricatures fight each other, and look at this. I don't know what you call Shia LaBeouf's acting style, but it's definitely entertaining. If anything, he knows how to be a concerned, worried guy. He can nail that down. So yeah, we saw that movie in theaters. It was just me, my little sister, and my aunt. It was just us hanging out in the theater, and that was probably my most enjoyable movie going experience I've had as a kid. And like I said, I came out of that movie saying that's my favorite movie of all time. That's my favorite movie of all time. And I can't say that continued to be the case for very long, but there's something about that movie, the original Michael Bay Transformers movie, where it's just not trying to be anything more than what it's trying to be, and it's too much. It's too much. We all know it's too much, but I liked it because it was too much in a way I enjoyed. All the characters, I feel like a lot of characters here got their moment. I'm still talking about Transformers here. A lot of characters got moments to shine. A lot of the human characters, they got moments to be funny or whatnot. A lot of the robots here got their fight scenes, or they got their time for characterization. And it was just a really well-rounded film. And it was just fun. It wasn't necessarily about the emotional connections or whatever. It was just a fun movie. It was a summer blockbuster action flick in the most perfect sense of the word, and that is why I enjoyed it. Now we get to Venom here. Venom feels like that type of movie. I couldn't help but think about the original Transformers and my reaction to the original Transformers when I saw this movie, Venom. It definitely has those sensibilities where it's just fun. It is just, you get your comedic moments. You get your crazy, really pretty impressive, I'd say, action scenes here. You get your typical fare for, this type of movie. It's a superhero movie after all. It feels like that classic summer action blockbuster. It gives you everything you'd want in that type of a film. Now, I say that I don't want to avoid the fact that there are issues in this movie. There are some plot issues, there are some pacing issues, and it's going to take you're going to have to suspend your disbelief in order to enjoy this film. And I will say, so if we're going to talk about the issues briefly, there's a whole sequence. Now, I don't want to go into spoilers because ultimately I am going to recommend this film. If you were interested in watching Venom but the reviews scared you off, then please understand that the reviews are not the end all be all. I found this movie to be way better than all the reviews said. If you still have no interest in Venom, if you didn't have any interest in Venom, then I'm not telling you need to see this movie right now. If you don't have any interest, you're probably not going to like it anyway. But if you were interested, it's still worth going out. So I am going to ultimately review this film. So I'm going to try to avoid spoilers. So yeah, there's a scene, not a scene. there's an extended sequence in the beginning of the movie that details. I'm not going to say what it details. All I'm going to say is there's a section, like the first 20 minutes happens 6 months before the rest of the movie happens. Like there's literally a 6-month gap. And I feel like, though they do call back to some parts of that initial sequence, I feel like all of that stuff that happened 6 months prior, not much of that was relevant. A lot of that stuff you could have just done within a few days rather than having to put in that 6-month time jump. That seemed completely pointless. And it was totally fine. It's not that it was bad. I actually enjoyed how they connected, because in that sequence they actually connected to the rest of the Spider-Man universe, because, you know, as you can probably tell from some of the trailers, this movie takes place in San Francisco, and historically we know Spider-Man and all of his rogues gallery and everything, we assume them to be from New York and in New York. That is not the case here, and they definitely explain why. Or they explain why Eddie Brock, who is Venom, they explain why he's in San Francisco instead of New York, and I was like, okay, that's pretty cool. They're addressing the other pieces of the universe of Spider-Man here. So I thought that was cool, and I like what they did with Eddie Brock. They gave him a similar job. They gave him a job similar to what he's been seen doing in other, in even Spider-Man 3 and in the comics and everything. It's something familiar, but it's something different. It's something new, and it's something a little bit more modern. So I really dug it. I dug that narrative conceit. I dug a lot of the family things happening too. There's a love interest in this movie, and I dig how the love interest is implemented. It's not something cliche. I like how she A, fights for herself, and B, I like how she is a direct connection to the mainline plot. I like how she's just not a throwaway character, so I really appreciate that. But yeah, that intro sequence, that first like 15-20 minutes of the movie just felt very unnecessary. Like by the time we were like into the swing of things, it didn't feel like we needed that. But yeah, other than that, once the movie does do that 6-month time jump and gets into the thick of things, I really dug it. Now, I will say this movie, because literally when I say I was coming into this movie ready to like laugh at it, I was doing that for, well, not like I wasn't actively laughing at it, but I was looking at the movie in that context for a good portion of it. I want to say the first like 20 to 40 minutes, maybe I'll say around the first 30 minutes. I was definitely looking at this movie as, oh, this is a piece of shit, I'm just gonna laugh at it. But then there was a point that happened, like it's near the point where, you know, Eddie Brock starts using his Venom powers for the first time. It was around that scene where there's some comedic bits in there that I laughed at, and it was at that point that I realized I'm not laughing at this movie because it's bad. I'm laughing when they want me to laugh. I'm laughing at the actual like jokes, and I'm laughing at the things that are intended for me to laugh at. So I was like, wow, okay, I think I actually like this movie. And then from then on, it kept its momentum up pretty well for me. Now, when you want to talk about momentum, this movie moves very, very quickly. It moves so quick that it doesn't necessarily give you time to. It doesn't necessarily build up to certain things. For instance, the character of Venom, I'm talking about the symbiote, the alien parasite that is inside of Eddie Brock. That character doesn't get enough time, I feel. By the end of the movie, like in the middle of the movie, Venom says his motivations, and then by the end of the movie, those motivations change. And I don't think that the movie details, or at least shows, the progression of that change of heart from Venom. Once he has that change of heart, it does not. It just doesn't feel like, it just feels like it came out of nowhere, because didn't seem like they were building up to it. And there were some other things alongside of, Venom. Venom's personality it's a double-edged sword, I'll say, because for the most part, I really like what they did with the actual character of Venom. I like how, because when I think of Venom, because I'm not exposed to Venom too much, besides Spider-Man 3, and in Spider-Man 3 he was just presented as just a kind of like just a resource that fuels off of anger or something like that. And in the few episodes of like TV shows and stuff that I've seen with Spider-Man in it, it's always seemed like, the symbiote is just a lifeless life form that, like, it seems like it is literally a parasite. It's just there to change the host. I like in this movie, I like how Venom is a character in and of itself, and that is one of the biggest reasons why I was reminded of Transformers so much. Them giving Venom a personality and making him kind of a crazed, deranged, hungry, like just bigger than life type of personality, for lack of a better word. Them making him into that really worked for me, and it kind of humanized the character. There was even, when talking about Venom again, he details a little bit of how he was treated on his own home planet, and I wish they went into that a little bit more, because that was very interesting, and that seemed to humanize Venom even more. I feel like they give you just enough like backstory for these characters to make you understand why they're doing things, but they like stop too short sometimes. Like in this example with the Venom one, I'd love to know, like, oh, how was he treated? I was actually hoping there's a final boss fight between another character. Once again, I don't want to spoil this. You probably already know what happens, but there's another boss fight, and this character would have likely have known, how Venom was treated back on the home planet. So I'm wondering, hey, I would have loved during that final boss fight for there to just be, symbiote to symbiote banter, just saying something along the lines of, oh yeah, Venom, you were blah 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 back home, so now you're blah 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 here. Like, I would have loved some backstory there, because I think it's really interesting how they set up Venom. It feels like Eddie Brock and Venom are a duo rather than it just be Eddie Brock getting altered. So I really, really appreciated that. I really think that's the main thing that makes this movie for me, and that's where a lot of the humor comes from too. But yeah, the romantic interest here, and the character that is alongside her in a lot of the scenes. Once again, trying not to spoil. Their whole thing is a little odd. The love interest, I like how it's not a typical love interest. Like I said, I like how she's not disposable. I like how she holds her own. I like how she's important to the main plot of the story. But I also like how she isn't just like, they don't just fall in love at the end, and they don't just start, oh, who's he? Like, it's an atypical love story. I think that's cool. It's a very, very, very messy love story at that. So I think that's something I appreciate. And then the character that is attached to her, I'm not gonna say how. He's okay. He gives me vibes of if you ever seen Ant-Man or Ant-Man and the Wasp, one of the two, but primarily Ant-Man in this case. The police officer character, that was, the ex-wife's boyfriend, that cop character gives me vibes of him. But they don't give Eddie Brock and him enough scenes to have that connection in a similar way. So maybe a little bit of waste opportunity there. And as far as everything else, I like the villain. I thought the performance of the villain was really, really good until he gets altered towards the end of the movie. Once he gets altered, it was a little bit less like, ooh, he's just evil, but he's like a little shit. But he changes and he's no longer a little shit, and then he becomes way more threatening, of course. But it's also like, all right, the original twist on the villain was kind of lost at that point. And I was totally fine with it, because at that point, like I said, I was more interested in, ooh, that's one of these two. I'm wondering how they're going to interact, how Venom and this other villain's going to interact. But was not quite what I wanted, what I was hoping. But ultimately, I really enjoyed this movie. I I can't tell you, like I said, I just laid out all the problems right there. But this movie had some really impressive action scenes towards the end, especially the final boss fight. There's some really crazy special effects with the symbiote specifically. Just some really crazy shit that I'm like, man, if I was watching this on my laptop, I'd be cropping some wallpapers out of here. Like, some really cool shots there. I really love the stuff with what's his name? Tom Hardy. Sorry, I had to think of the actor's name. Tom Hardy does a really great job as Eddie Brock, especially the scenes in which he's just been combined with Venom for the first time, and you know, Eddie Brock's going a little bit crazy. I thought those scenes were really cool, and I just think Eddie Brock as a character in general was a pretty neat character. It's definitely, Eddie Brock is definitely a really good anti-hero. He one of those people whose heart is in the right place, but his methods are brute force, kind of messy, gets in the way and all that stuff. I really think that's a cool dichotomy, and his original job, or his job in the movie, does reflect that heavily. So I think that's just really, really cool how they were able to pull that off. And then thinking about other elements of it, you know, special effects are pretty cool, and it was just like, this movie felt a lot more like a comedy than anything else. It starts off and you think, oh man, this is gonna be a really dark, fucked up movie, but as you go on, there's a lot of like just levity in the script, and yeah, it's pretty cool. And I just walked into this thinking, hey, this is gonna be, I'm gonna watch this movie, laugh at how bad it is the whole time, and I'm gonna obnoxiously sing the Eminem song that plays at the end of this movie. And yes, it does play at the end of this movie. But no, I sung that Eminem song obnoxiously, but I did so with some enthusiasm. It wasn't just to be ironic and be like, oh yeah, this movie was fucking awful, I'm so hype off of that. It was, no, I was pleasantly surprised by this movie, and I think it's worth a shot if you're looking for just a solid action flick, solid superhero movie, or anti-hero, super anti-hero, you know, whatever. If you're looking for that type of film, this is right up your alley. Now, if you have no interest in this type of genre, if you have no interest in the Spider-Man universe or Venom himself, you don't have to. I'm not about to tell you go out and watch this thing right now, because this is not a cinematic masterpiece, as I've said in the video. But if you're interested, I don't think, even despite those reviews that, you know, said it was bad in so many different colorful ways, despite those, I had fun with the movie. I thought it was good. Not great, but good. And, you know, if you're interested, I don't think there's anything to lose here. I think you're in for a pretty good time. So yeah, I just want to talk about Venom for a little bit, so that's the end of me doing that. I shall be talking to y'all in the next video. And thank y'all for, you know, watching. And thank you for the support on other videos. If you want to click around and see what else I got. My last movie review, I believe, was Black Panther. These superhero movies are pretty popular, huh? So if you want to watch that, that is on my channel. And then, of course, I also do hip-hop and other music reviews on this channel as well. And some other videos in the near future, maybe. So, yeah, please be on the lookout for all of these things. And some other things coming up real soon this month. Wink, wink, wink. But without further ado, thank y'all for watching. And as I always say, keep it real. Keep it trill.
Oberon just gave us everything. We know the location of their main base operations. We know it's defenseless. I don't know. Helicopters en route, fellas.